Animals all throughout the world have been acting strangely. Is this a sign of the end of the days? What does the Bible say? Is the time of Jesus Christ's second return? Stay with us as we find out the reason behind On the Unknown Fact. In the city of Cuauhtemoc in the north of Mexico, hundreds of yellow-headed blackbirds have been filmed on camera appearing to fall from the sky, with some of them perishing in the process. The circumstances surrounding the incident are unknown. The exact cause of death is still unknown. However, experts believe that the flock was flushed from above by a predatory bird that swooped down to make a catch. The video that was recorded by a security camera shows a flock of migratory birds coming down on houses like a cloud of dark smoke. The majority of the birds are able to get away, but subsequent footage reveals that the distinctive black and yellow birds have died, and their bodies are scattered across the streets of the city. According to the reports from the neighborhood, the incident took place on the morning of February 7th. The birds typically breed in the northernmost parts of the U.S. and Canada, and then travel south to spend the winter in Mexico. According to the local newspaper El Heraldo de Chihuahua, which was the first to report the story, a veterinarian speculated that high levels of pollution could be to blame for the incident. These high levels of pollution were reportedly caused by the use of wood-burning heaters, agrochemicals, and the cold weather in the area. It was also hypothesized that the birds had been killed by electricity while they were perched on power lines. On social media, there was some conjecture that the 5G technology could have been the source of the problem. But Dr. Richard Broughton, an ecologist with the UK Centre for Ecology and Hydrology, stated that even though he could not see a raptor in the footage, he was 99% certain that it was caused by a predatory bird. He said this despite the fact that he could not see the raptor in the footage. It's possible that a predator caused the flock of birds to swarm together tightly and drive them down toward the ground, with higher birds driving lower birds to crash into buildings or the ground below them. It seems as though a raptor like a peregrine or a hawk has been following a flock as they do with murmuring starlings, and they have crashed as the flock was forced low, he added. This looks like a raptor, like a peregrine or a hawk has been chasing a flock. You can see that they behave like a wave at the beginning as if they are being flushed from above. Dr. Alexander Lees, who teaches at Manchester Metropolitan University and specializes in conservation biology, is of the same opinion. For his part, and based on one video and no toxicology, he would still say the most probable cause is the flock murmuring to avoid a predatory raptor and hitting the ground. There always appears to be a knee-jerk reflex to blame environmental pollution, but collisions with infrastructure are fairly regular. There are a lot of things that may go wrong. Because the birds in a densely packed flock are more concerned with imitating the motions of the bird in front of them than with truly perceiving their larger surroundings, it is not surprising that incidents of this nature occur on occasion. It was later determined that the fatalities of 225 starlings in Anglesey in December 2019 were caused by their diving onto the tarmac. It is possible that they were being followed by a predatory bird and unable to draw up in time. But what does the Bible say about the crashing of the birds? In the Old Testament, the prophets Hosea and Zephaniah both make reference to fish and birds being swept away or eaten. The question that needs to be answered is whether or not these prophets are referring to the end times or to other times, when Israel was devastated. These are verses in the Bible that refer to these disasters. Listen to the word of the Lord, all of you who are Israel. For the Lord hath a controversy with the inhabitants of the land, because there is no truth, nor mercy, nor knowledge of God in the land. By swearing and lying and killing, stealing and committing adultery, they break out, and blood toucheth blood. Therefore shall the land mourn, and every one that dwelleth therein shall languish, with the beasts of the field, and with the fowls of heaven. Yea, the fishes of the sea will also shall be taken away. I will consume man and beast, I will consume the fowls of the heaven, and the fishes of the sea, and the stumbling blocks with the wicked, and I will cut off man from off the land, saith the Lord. Zephaniah 1:3. We should never take verses out of the context of the whole chapter. These men were predicting the reigns of particular kings and the events that would occur during those reigns. While Zephaniah prophesies during the reign of the virtuous King Josiah, Hosea prophesies against Jeroboam. This was done so that the people could not blame their own sinfulness on the command of the king. There is no doubt in our minds that these ancient Israelites were predicting the impending doom of their nation, and their predictions were born out of history. In a nutshell, these prophecies have been realized in their entirety. However, it is quite possible that both humans and animals will be affected by the plagues and famines that have been predicted as prophecies of the times for the end of the age. This prophecy also says that fish will be washed away, which happened in the past years, proving that it is true. Over 100,000 fish were discovered washed up on the riverbanks along a stretch of the Arkansas River that is 20 miles long and is located near Ozark. The strange occurrence is being looked into by the appropriate authorities, but specialists believe that sickness is the most plausible explanation for what's going on. The drumfish were found by an operator of a tugboat, which was the day before thousands of blackbirds dropped from the sky in Little Rock, which is located only 125 miles away. That year, before the fishes were found a day before, around 11 o'clock that night, thousands of red-winged blackbirds started falling out of the sky over this small city, which is about 35 miles northeast of Little Rock. They fell on roofs, roads, front lawns, and backyards, making the ground look almost black and scaring anyone who was outside at the time. Lab results from the Arkansas Livestock and Poultry Commission showed that some of the dead birds had acute physical trauma. There were no signs of disease, but tests were still being done to see if any dangerous chemicals were present. On the same day, about 500 dead birds were found outside of New Roads, Louisiana. Those birds were much more diverse than just blackbirds. These were also starlings and grackles, and a wildlife veterinarian with the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, James LaCour, took a few samples and said that none of them showed any signs of trauma. The expansion of the agricultural business, together with the pesticides and equipment utilized, has had an impact on 73% of the world's endangered bird species, as stated in the most recent report on the state of the world's birds, published by BirdLife International. Nearly half of the world's bird populations are in decline, and only 6% of them are growing. This is a sad situation that calls for more conservation efforts to help stop these huge population drops. According to the findings of the report, which is compiled and distributed once every 4 years, there are a total of 1,409 species that are in danger of going extinct. Since 1970, North America has had a loss of about 3 billion birds, which is equivalent to a decrease of 29%. In comparison, the European Union, which is a territory that is 5 times smaller than North America, has experienced a loss of 600 million birds since 1980. It would appear that countries all around the world are experiencing the same kinds of problems. According to Lucy Haskell, a science officer at BirdLife and the report's primary author, we have already lost over 160 bird species in the previous 500 years, and the rate of extinction is accelerating. Historically, the majority of extinct species were found on islands. Nevertheless, there is a concerning expanding wave of continental extinctions caused by landscape-scale habitat loss. The primary reason for these large die-offs is the growth of agriculture practices. For example, since 1980, the agricultural industry in Europe has contributed to a fall in the continent's farmland bird population is greater than 55%. In addition, unsustainable rates of logging and deforestation have led to the fall in bird populations across the globe and have a substantial impact on over half of the bird species that are considered to be vulnerable. Climate change and the spread of invasive species also threaten bird populations, as is bycatch from fishing, the growth of residential and commercial development, the increasing number and severity of wildfires, and poorly planned energy production. The authors of the paper state that climate change has a negative impact on more than 34% of vulnerable species through the occurrence of extreme weather events such as droughts or storms. There is a good chance that avian biodiversity may face even more challenges in the future as a result of the rising frequency and severity of natural disasters. Nevertheless, in spite of these disheartening findings, the experts maintain that there are approaches available to address these issues. The Conference of Convention on Biological Diversity took place in December 2022. During this meeting, scientists worked to approve and implement a 10-year plan that aimed to address the dwindling biodiversity of our world. Additional measures include the management of invasive species, the preservation of remaining intact habitats, the restoration of degraded ecosystems, the prevention of overexploitation and illegal bird killings, and the minimization of the detrimental effects of energy infrastructure such as power lines. There are many examples of species that have been spared from extinction, populations that have recovered, risks that have been effectively handled, and ecosystems that have been restored. So these are the scientific reasons behind, but is there anything more? The book of Genesis in the Bible talks about how Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed. The Bible says that because Sodom and Gomorrah were so evil, God burned them down with fire and brimstone. The Dead Sea, which is in the same area as these cities, is linked to their destruction. The Dead Sea is a salt lake that is almost 10 times saltier than the ocean. People think that when Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed, a huge flood filled the area with water, making the Dead Sea. The destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah is a big deal in the Bible, and the fact that it has to do with the Dead Sea makes it even bigger. The Dead Sea is a reminder of God's power and judgment, as well as a warning to those who would follow in their footsteps. In the same way, these strange happenings to animals link everything to the Bible. People have talked for decades about the possibility that the fact that animals are dying, birds are collapsing, and animals are acting strangely is a sign that the second coming of Christ is getting closer. Others think that these things are just natural, even though some people think that they are signs that the end of the world is coming. There is nothing in the Bible that says for sure that animals dying, birds falling from the sky, or animals acting strangely are signs of the second coming of Christ. On the other hand, some people read certain parts of the Bible to say that these events could be a sign that the end of the world is getting close. In Matthew 24:7-8, Jesus says, "For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in many places." This passage comes from the book of Matthew. This is the first step toward all of our misery. This passage could be read to mean that the death of animals, the dropping of birds, and the strange behavior of animals could be signs of the second coming of Christ. Some people think that the fact that these things are happening could be a sign that we are living at the end of the world because they have experienced them themselves. For example, some people have said that they saw big flocks of birds suddenly fall from the sky or animals acting in a strange way. Some people think that these things are signs of the second coming of Christ, even though they might be caused by things like disease or patterns in the weather. The question of whether the death of animals, the disappearance of birds, or strange behavior in animals is a sign of the return of Christ. So that was all about the video. Hope you find it informative. Then do subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and press the bell icon for more updates like this.